Hi, this is Aliza Licht, and this is Leave Your Mark, the podcast, where I brew fresh career advice in conversation with some of my most inspiring and successful friends. It's professional advice that you can action immediately, whether you're just starting out in your career or well on your way. With a massive to-do list and a large cup of coffee, I promise that you can get it all done and still have time to post about it.
Bevy Smith, I am I am so overjoyed to see you in the flesh.
I know. It's been too long.
Way too long. I mean, beyond. Thank you so much for coming on Leave Your Mark podcast. I am so excited to dig into this conversation. But first of all, I want everyone to make sure that they know who they're hearing right now. So you are a media personality. You are the host of Bevelations, a 1-hour Sirius XM show on Radio Andy. You're the former host of Page 6 TV and Fashion Queens. You are the host of Dinner with Bevy. You are a former advertising executive for Vibe and Rolling Stone. You are for sure a social media socialite and personality with TV credits that include BET, VH1, E, Bravo. It goes on. And I think the most exciting bit of this is that your memoir is coming out in 2020, which is going to be epic.
Yeah.
That is for sure. First of all, you're a friend and you're a wonderful person, but you are also smart, you're authoritative, you are a brilliant speaker, you're a writer, you're a mentor. And I think that you have such important lessons and advice to share. So we'll start at the beginning. You are a native New Yorker.
Yes, I am. Born and raised in Harlem. Always felt like the city was my kind of playground. And I talk a lot about Harlem because I really feel like coming from a place that many people saw was a negative, but was such a positive in my life, really kind of gave me that spunk and that ability to see things in a totally different way. So here I was, working in these spaces where I would be the only one, maybe the only Black person, maybe the youngest person, these kind of things. And that otherness is something that I've always kind of embraced. I never wanted to fit in, as you know.
How did you have the confidence to not want to fit in, though? That is not common.
Well, it's so interesting. It really does go back to being from Harlem because I fit in my community.
Sure.
And my community was so important to me. So then when I went downtown and I started working in the fabulous worlds of advertising and the fabulous worlds of fashion, while I valued those worlds, I didn't curry favor with them. So it was just like, well, this is nice what you guys have going on. I always tell this story. I was a kid, a receptionist at an advertising agency, Peter Rogers Associates, and Brooke Shields had a jeans line, and she was one of the clients. And Brooke would come in, and Brooke and I are the same age. So her mom would go in the back and do business, and Brooke would hang out in the front with me in the reception area. And I remember Brooke, of course, was the Calvin Klein girl, and she was a very famous model and actress and all the things. And I would always look at Brooke and think, she's fabulous. But I'm also fabulous in a very different way. Like, I was a very popular girl in my space. So she's very popular in her space, and that's cute. But I'm very popular in my space. Because, if she went up to Harlem, no one would really care.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
So that's kind of what gave me the confidence. I was like, it is really lovely to be a part of all these things, but I'm also a part of something that's very important and that's really culturally relevant. And now, of course, you fast forward 30 years and, urban culture, hip hop culture is really the dominant space. It's pop culture.
Yes, for sure. So it's almost like you found your vertical. It's
Yes.
like you owned your vertical.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think just as far as how you were raised, I imagine you were a very outspoken child.
No, I was actually a painfully shy child. And I talk about this in my book, but, we were middle class in the middle of the hood. And so we didn't really fit in. We were kind of weird kids in the space.
How many siblings?
3. My brother's 11 years older than I am, and my sister is 1 year older. So I'm the baby. And it was really a lovely childhood, but we didn't necessarily fit in. And it wasn't until I was 13 that I learned how to become a cool kid. But initially, very quiet, very bookish, We always did things on the weekends. You know, we would go to museums. We would go to Central Park all the time. We were always doing things that were culturally enriching. So we missed out on a lot of the good fun, just being outside with our friends kind of thing.
Interesting.
So it made us like kind of like weird. You know, it's weird to say, but like I would imagine you probably went to summer camp.
Yes.
And all your friends went to the same summer camp. But imagine if your parents had sent you to a different summer camp. Then you would be like a fish out of water when you went back to school,
yes,
right?
Yes.
That's kind of how we were.
Got it.
We didn't go to the same summer camp as our friends did. So we were like kind of nebbishy.
What was your first sort of internship or job? Like, how did you start? And by the way, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Wow. Now that's a really complex one. What did I want to be when I grew up? Because in writing the book, I talk about a lot of my influences. So TV I loved, and I also loved old movies. So I've always loved architecture, and I've always loved New York City. So when I was a kid, because my parents are much older, by the way. So my dad was 42 when I was born. My mom was 38. So this is in the 1960s. Now, of course, that is very normal, and that is like the age, right? Back then, people had kids in their 20s, in their early 20s. So my parents were far older than everyone else. But that meant that I had a lot of older references in my repertoire.
Okay.
So for me to, you know, watch a movie with Cary Grant and Doris Day or something like that was not like a weird thing. It was like I knew who these people were because my parents were like in that same kind of age space. And so in the 1950s, late 50s, early 60s, lots of movies started kind of like showing career gals, you know, secretaries, and then sometimes they would be like a copywriter if they were really bold, you know, that kind of thing.
100%.
And I remember watching those movies and loving the way those women dressed. I loved the fact that they would go into offices and they would wear their high heels and they would have on an amazing dress and they would like have lunch with a guy and that kind of stuff. And I would like be like, yeah, I want to work in a high rise one day. And of course, because I'm from Manhattan, I saw them all the time. Many of the buildings, like Lever Houses in a million of those movies. You know what I mean? Like
I'm picturing Melanie Griffith in Working Girl.
Right, exactly. So it's like all these different things. Like I would see them and I'd be like, yes, one day I'm going to be. And then the Dick Van Dyke Show, he worked in advertising. Bewitched, Darren worked in advertising. Advertising just kind of like became a thing. And I was always very interested in marketing. It's the weirdest thing. I would always look at the way like snack foods were marketed.
Just like in your spare time.
In my spare time. I'm telling you, I was a very weird kid. That kind of thing. And then, of course, being from Harlem, which is a very fashionable place. So I always loved style and fashion. My mother is quite the fashion plate. So, you know, I didn't even realize you could like have a career in fashion.
Same.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't even know you could have a career in fashion. So it was a pleasant surprise. But my first job in fashion and in advertising was at that advertising agency, Peter Rogers Associates. And they did Black Llama Mink. So, you know, the famous What Becomes a Legend Most.
Yes.
They had Bottega Veneta, When Your Own Initials Are Enough. They had Vidal Sassoon, and Vidal Sassoon still owned Vidal Sassoon.
Wow.
And so he would come into the office, and I was the receptionist. So I met all these grand people. Like I met Claudette Colbert. I met Cher. I met Diana Ross. I met all these people. They would come into the office.
That's amazing.
So can you imagine?
No. You had the best spot in the house.
Yeah, I had the best spot. I had the actual best spot in the house. And what's so interesting, too, for me is that now, of course, I'm a host in a myriad of ways. But I was a host back then, too.
You're right.
Because back then, a receptionist was a very big job because it was the face of the company.
I think a lot of brands still view it as that.
Yeah, but I don't know if people still have receptions. I feel like you always have to dial a damn number and then the people tell you they buzz you. There's no, you know?
Yes.
I just don't. But
I think Benefit Makeup, if I remember correctly, their reception job, the title of that is Director of First Impressions.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that was my first job and it was really incredible. And I met amazing mentors, including Kenny Valenti, who's one of the largest vintage collectors in the world. And he really he noticed me. He knows that I was always reading because, of course, it's before computers.
Right. So
when you were a receptionist back then, you read a book.
Of course, because if the phone wasn't ringing, what were you doing?
Reading a book. So I would read books. And, I loved classic literature because my dad is very, very bookish. And so we were a library going kind of family. We would take trips to libraries and to bookstores. So I was always reading and things like that.
Oh my God. Can you teach my kids to do that? That'd be really
well,
awesome.
now it's too tough. But so, yeah, I met him. I met my other mentor, Jeff McKay, who I then went on to work for when I was in my mid to late 20s, he really gave me my career in advertising. He's the reason why I was able to ascend to such great heights, because he literally gave me an amazing job and let me make it what I wanted it to be. And he gave me carte blanche. And he was the first person to send me to Europe for the shows. And he did all these wonderful things. So, I was very blessed. I was very fortunate. In the middle of all of that, I went back to school. I went to NYU. And what was so crazy about that.
Why'd you go back to school?
Well, because I left school.
Okay.
I mean, high school.
Yeah.
And then I went and got a job.
Got it.
And then I was like, oh, I should go back to school and get my degree. I went to NYU and I was fully in my career at this point.
So did you go at night?
Yeah, I went at night.
Oh, wow.
Fully in my career. And the rubber hit the road, as it often does, because I was an executive at an advertising agency, meaning there are dinners, there are business trips and all of it. And my boss was just like, well, you kind of can't keep missing these events and these dinners and these things. And I was like, I remember telling them, you're a white man. You don't understand. I need my degree. He's like, you could teach the class at this point. And I was like, I need my degree. I'm a Black woman. I need my degree. He was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. And I had to make a choice. And I actually chose to leave school. So I never finished.
All right. Well, you know what? It was the right decision at the right time. I don't think you're worse for it.
No,
I mean, I think
no.
it's worked out just...
No, it did. It worked out well. But I always tell people this, which is why I'm actually telling you this. You're the first person I'm telling in public, but I talk about it in the book. And
I am honored.
Thank you. But I talk about it in the book because I want people to understand something. First of all, if you can get into NYU already, there's something upstairs, right?
Absolutely.
So I wasn't coming behind. I didn't have such a deficit. And I was already in my career. So this is like the old timey saying, don't try this trick at home, kids. Like it may not work out so well for you. As we all know that, people that do not have degrees make drastically less than people who have 4-year degrees, traditionally. Now, there are people, of course, there's a Puffy, there's a Steve Jobs, there's many people that have dropped out and done quite well.
Yes.
But then there's also all those other cautionary tales. So
yes,
don't try this at home, kids.
Yes, no, it's so true. But you did end up in fashion and advertising, and you worked really, especially now, I know you feel this way. It's like, it was the heyday of magazines. Yes. And I think that anyone who worked during that time, there's something super magical about it that's just gone.
Oh, definitely.
What do you think is the most important thing or experience you had back then?
Wow. There's so many different experiences that I had back then that really kind of shaped me and that I keep with me. One, Dinner with Bevy was actually created out of what I would do when I was in Milan and Paris. When I was the fashion advertising director at Vibe, I would host celebrities and introduce them to brands. To brands.
Yeah.
And to design houses. So kind of like having those real, authentic relationships was possible back then. Because one, people weren't doing 5 different jobs. Okay? Because now if you're an editor or now if you're an advertising person, you have to answer all your own calls. You have to do your own expense account. You have to do everything yourself as far as your job description goes, right? But then you also have to be on social media. You have to be making your videos. You have to be Snapchat. They expect you to do it all.
And you're probably working on multiple titles.
And you're working across multiple titles. So how do you make authentic relationships? You don't have time. You're strangers in the night. You're passing by each other. But, in my heyday, a fashion week in Milan and Paris, everybody was the homie. It didn't matter what book you were at. We all had dinners together. We all hung out together. We would share cars sometimes. Oh, your car didn't show up. You can get in my car. It didn't matter if you were at GQ or Esquire or, Marie Claire. Oh, girl, come on, you can hit your ride or what have you. It was all of that. There was such a great camaraderie. And that's why all of us from that era, if you know this, we're all still tight.
Yes.
We may not see each other, but I've been trying to do this podcast with you forever because we're friends.
Yes.
I don't know if you can develop friendships like that in this era of being overworked and overwrought.
I think people are just too busy on their phones.
Yeah.
To be honest. But it's true. And it's funny, ironically, because I think that our relationship really grew from Twitter.
Yes.
Right?
Well, the early days of Twitter, which was a divine thing.
A divine thing.
Where you could actually meet people.
Yeah.
I would never meet someone now on social media. Like, if we connected, I would never say, let's meet up in IRL. Like, get out of here.
I actually still do.
You do?
I do. Yeah, I do.
But you have to vet them now. Before you just kind of like met people. I literally met people just because we had great chats on Twitter. But never do that now. Now I would be Googling, making sure they don't have a criminal record. You know what I mean?
I know. I totally know what you mean. But I think that, we both understand the power of having a presence on social media. And you do a lot of mentoring on social media and you're super vocal. And I feel like you're helping thousands of people with your words. So you must enjoy that too, even though it's changed.
Yeah, it's changed. It's not even so much that I enjoy it. It's just sometimes I feel compelled to do it. You know what I mean? I feel very called to do it. Like even today I posted something about kind of getting back to yourself. Sometimes you forget who you are. You have to get back to yourself. And I think that that's something that probably everyone listening to your podcast can understand. Like, you can really kind of get into a space where you're like, okay, I'm lost now. And who am I? And it's such a blessing to be able to get back to that. So I said that on social media today. But sometimes it's a lot less of that and a lot more of just like my pictures of the people that I've interviewed on my show or different things like that, because that's just the nature of the beast now.
Sure. Well, you know what? An eclectic mix is always the best recipe,
and
right?
You know what's interesting? People really like the family photos. Like people love my mom. People ask about my mom all the time.
Yeah, because it's feeling close to you and wanting to see your authentic self in your world. And of course, if they love you, they want to know where you came from and who is that woman that made you.
Yeah.
So what is your social media weapon of choice today?
Oh, Instagram. I'm an Instagram person now. I find that you can get in way too much trouble on Twitter. In Instagram, you're not going to have a conversation. You're going to post it and it's done and it's safe. And you have to think about that now, especially when you're someone like me who fires on all cylinders.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Curtail your conversation.
I still love your tweets though. So I remember years ago, we were at a dinner together, one of many dinners that we've had. And we were talking and I think I said, or Mickey Boardman said, Bevy, you should be on TV. And why are you not on TV? And we were talking about our career paths, etc. And you had said that, how you've had a lot of opportunities to be on TV, but you've passed on them. And in really researching and reminding myself of your amazing career for this podcast, I realized you have passed on, Tim Gunn's Guide to Style and a series on oxygen of your own. So, you don't really hear about people passing on opportunities like that. And I think it speaks to, well, A, your just total sense of self and your worth. And B, your confidence and also your sort of, I guess, moral compass or mental compass. And I want to understand, and I think this is what I was so excited to talk to you about today, how you sort of evaluate opportunities. Because I think a lot of young people especially, or even people who have had jobs and then left the workforce and have to get back in, think like, oh my God, if I don't take this job, I'm never going to get another job. And here, this is something that you were meant to do. You're meant to be on television, but yet you said no. So walk us through that entire thing, because I think there's so much to learn from the power of no, but you really have to have the strength to say it.
But also ignorance is bliss, right? So,
You are not ignorant, my dear.
No, but, in regards to the Tim Gunn offer on Bravo, it's so funny because Hunter Hill, who used to be at Paper, he was friends with Andy Cohen, and I want to say they were maybe out in Fire Island, and Andy was talking about casting the Tim Gunn show. Now, Andy at this point is a TV executive. That's it. He's not a personality. And he says, oh, I need someone with a big personality, but really actually has real fashion knowledge in the background. Because Tim Gunn obviously will not suffer fools. So Hunter says, my friend Bevy Smith has just started getting into TV. You should see her. I get a call. I go in. I don't meet with Andy. They just tape me. And then they send it into Andy. And at the time, his boss was this wonderful woman named Amy Introcaso Davis, who's now, I think she runs VH1, but she's a muckety muck. So they send it in. And then all of a sudden they send me a contract. And I'm like, oh my God.
Just like that.
Yeah, girl, I got the job. So that was a gag. So I'm like, obviously, happy days are here. You know, I'm high kicking, doing the flips, the cartwheels, the whole thing. And then I look at the contract. Now, remember, I'm a business person, right?
Yes.
So I'm an advertising professional.
And you're used to looking at contracts.
And I'm used to looking at contracts. So I begin to look at the contract and I find out it's quite restricting. I'm like, this is a horrible contract.
This is so shocking.
Yes, this is a bad contract. And because I'm a negotiator, which, by the way, for all you women who are out there listening, please learn how to negotiate on your own behalf. I have agents. I have a manager. I have the whole kit and caboodle. I'm in the middle of every single negotiation that goes down in regards to my business.
Oh, that's really wise words.
Yeah. Because, okay, no one's going to negotiate for you as hard. And they also don't know everything that you're willing to move on and, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So anyway, I'm looking at the contract. It seems tragic and horrible. I send it over to the lawyer. And I'm like totally naive and incredibly optimistic. So I said, yeah, you know, just tell them that doesn't work and that doesn't work and, you know, redline that and send it back. And I'm sure we can come to something. We'll meet in the middle because I'm a negotiator, right? And, you know, negotiating is all about, you know, both parties come out feeling like no one got robbed, but everyone's got something that they wanted. Those nice people at Bravo came back. I'm like, okay, girl, no. And I said to my lawyer, I said, what do you mean no? And he said, no, they came back and they said, no to every single thing that we asked for. I'm like, but that's not a negotiation. You can't negotiate. He said, yeah, they're not negotiating. I didn't understand it. I was very confused. So then I said, well, he said, there's nothing we can do. You have to. And I said, well, you can always do something. I said, let's say no. And he said, good for you. Good for you.
Bravo. And I don't mean that pun.
Right, exactly.
Bravo.
Bravo. And I said no. Now, again, I'm naive at this point. So I literally believe I've received this job offer so quickly that, of course, another one's coming down the pipe. So I say no. Andy Cohen calls me in to meet with him and his boss, Amy. And
You're like in trouble.
Right. I'm like, well, I'm thinking they're now going to negotiate, right? And I come in and I have on all the looks. I probably had on probably $20,000 worth of garments. You know, I'm like Masoni. I got Goyard. I have, you know, I'm all the things. And
you're a movie star.
I'm a movie star. And I'm looking the part of like this bubbly, vibrant fashionista.
Yes. Which you are, regardless of the show.
Right. So when they see me, Andy says, you're even better in person than you were on tape. And then he says, we're going to work together one day. And for 7 years, Andy Cohen tried to place me on various shows. Like he would cast me in a pilot he was doing. If he was anything, he would just keep trying for 7 years. And then 7 years, which is the number of completion in the Bible.
Interesting.
I was guest bartending on Watch What Happens Live. Bethany Frankel is on doing a solo show with Andy. Bethany and I had done a pilot together called Fashionality that Andy had put together. So Bethany knows me. So you know how normally the person that's the bartender just is back there and they're like, hi.
So they invited you onto the couch.
They invited me onto the couch.
Okay, big moment.
Hilarity ensues. And when I get off, Andy Cohen says, I have the show for you. The show I'm developing I want you to, helm it. And I'm like, okay. And he tells me about Fashion Queens. It wasn't called that at the time. Tells me about Fashion Queens. I'm not especially jazzed about it, but I'm like, I should probably do it. Bravo's a really good network. And this time around, the contract was quite favorable. So I did it, and it was a game changer.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where ignorance was truly bliss. I did not know it would take 7 years. And I have to tell you, I don't know that if I had known that it would take 7 years to get another really great offer of that ilk, that I would have said no.
Why'd you say no to Oxygen?
Oh, child. Well, that was going to be a conflama because they wanted me to work with someone who was very combative and vaguely sexist and racist.
Oh.
And I said to myself, this could be really bad.
Doesn't sound like Oxygen.
I mean, I was with a person who was really toxic. And what I knew is that what could happen is that she'll say something crazy. I'll say something crazy back. She was known for being like very high-tempered, get in your face.
To get a rise out of you, of course.
Get a rise out of you. And then what happens? Then
they just pull your quote.
Yeah. Or am I the black woman on TV fighting?
Yeah.
I can't be that.
No, you cannot.
My parents worked way too hard for me to just end up being a caricature on television. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that your thought process and holding out, 7 years, it does obviously sound long. And of course, you had no idea what would happen, but you trust your gut.
Yeah.
You trust your gut, and you know that if you're not signing your life away for anyone or anything.
But what's so interesting about that too is that in those 7 years, so everything is as it should be, which is a Bevyism. Everything is as it should be. So because it took 7 years, I actually ran out of money. And that's the reason why I created Dinner with Bevy, because I had to make money to support myself so that I wouldn't have to do a reality TV show, because I kept getting offered reality TV shows because I'm really good reality TV
in
fodder.
reality.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so that's how I created Dinner with Bevy. So I'm an accidental entrepreneur because I did not have a TV show. So I don't get to be the full person that I am if I get the Tim Gunn show.
That's unbelievable.
Isn't that something?
Amazing.
So everything is as it should be.
100%. So how would you recommend, obviously you're older, you're wiser, you have a lot of experience. People who are coming out of college and getting offers, or people that have been in the workforce for some years, leave to have a child, want to come back in, but feel like, I'm not even excited about that, but like, it's a job, so I should take it. I may not get another one. Like, what would you tell people to think about?
Well, for the young people, I think do it all. Try your hand at it. On Page 6 TV, we had so many wonderful PAs, production assistants, that literally will come in for a year, 6 months, do it, maybe didn't fit them, leave. Good for you. The olden days of having to stay at a job for at least 2 years and better for 5, done.
Yep.
Over. And it's a good thing. And it is a very good thing, because we were beholden to these companies. They shaped and formed our identity. I had to be Beverly Smith from Vibe. I had to be Beverly Smith from Rolling Stone. Like, these things are not healthy. We are not these companies. That we don't own them.
No, we do not.
And so why are we cleaving onto them and letting them shape our identity? So I say to the young people, go out and explore. Go west, young woman, and just explore and see what's out there that you're passionate about. And you should really actually tap into your passions and try your hand at it.
So I'm gonna do a counterpoint to you, because coming obviously from corporate side of things, and obviously being a hiring manager and staying in that zone for a long time, a lot of people, myself included, will look at a resume, see someone changing jobs every 6 months, and be like, well, you know what? She's going to hop.
Right.
I don't need to spend time training someone to be on my team when I know in 6 months' time she's going to be looking for something else.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
Well, I would also say, that's a case-by-case kind of scenario, because I think that we all know, the young people, that we're a good judge of character. So my niece is 25, and she has had maybe 3 jobs But now she's been at this one job in particular now for a year, which she absolutely loves. And before that, she was a hopper. But now she found something that really fits her. It suits her. The mission of the company works for her.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing something that not only is she passionate about, she feels like she's helping people.
Great.
So it works for her. And I think that, we shouldn't penalize young people for not suffering the way we used to.
That's well said, actually.
Listen, things happen. You could have someone who's been at a job for 5 years and come in and only want to do 6 months because they hate it or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guarantees. But I do think it's healthy, and maybe not every 6 months, but I think it's healthy to move around. Also, too, as we all know, that's the only way you actually make money in these businesses now. Because if you stay put, they're never going to pay you the way that you should. You're never going to have the correct compensation.
Well, it certainly birthed the side hustle.
Yes.
Many side hustles.
But you shouldn't have to have a side hustle. If you're doing a great job and you're passionate about it, you should be paid not just a living wage, you should be paid an excellent wage. I don't believe in this whole, I have, obviously I have a very diversified income pool, but that's just because I don't have a 9-to-5 job. And I love doing all these different things. So I love being a public speaker, and I love being a dinner party host, and I love being on TV, and I love being on the radio. And now I've just started auditioning for acting. So I'm going to do all those things.
You are a multi-hyphenate for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you...
and for the older people.
Oh, yes, the older people.
What I would say is this.
Which is us.
Yes, which is us. Oh, definitely. You have to understand your gifts and your value. So you have a lot of information. I would actually say to the older people, don't look for a job. Look for an opportunity. So, like I said, I created Dinner with Bevy. I couldn't have gotten a job doing that, but I created Dinner with Bevy because I had 2 very valuable Rolodexes. I had all these music artists that I had great relationships with, and I had all these great fashion house relationships and all these great editorial relationships. And so I was able to create a business. So I think everyone that's older has to look at it in that way, because there is definitely still ageism in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to pay you, first of all.
No, they don't.
So someone our age is certainly, especially in our glamour positions, we're at least $350,000, if not $500,000 kind of hire. They can hire a 30-year-old girl who's amazing, maybe doesn't have the same contacts and relationships, but she can get up to speed, and they can give her $150,000, and she requires no bonus, and she does, okay.
Yep. No, you're right. 100%
So
right.
they're not going to give us our coins, so we might as well go out and hunt and forage and create our own space in which to be genius.
I love that. Work-life balance?
So, such a struggle for the entire time I was on Page 6 TV. But now that it's over, and we've known the show was going off the air since maybe May. And so I started having more of a work-life balance. For me, my family, my parents, they're 91 and 94. So a lot of my personal life is centered around them, making sure I'm doing good things with them, taking care of them. Dating, but all of it is like a real, I don't want to say it's a struggle, but you have to actually pencil it in and make time. So on my calendar, it will say when I have a date. I'm not changing that.
I mean, if it wasn't on your calendar, how would you ever know?
Right. But I would know, but I don't want my assistant to change it or say, can you go to this gala? No, girl, I can't. I got a date.
Yeah. No.
And I want it to be the priority.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's great. What is something you haven't done yet that you would love to do?
Well, like I said, I'm now auditioning for acting jobs, and that's something that
scripted. You want scripted.
Mm-hmm. And so that is something that I'm going to do. So in 2020, you will see me on the small screen or on the big screen acting.
I love it.
Yeah, that's going to happen. That's already done.
For sure. Meaning you have a gig?
No.
You're just making it happen.
Oh, it's done.
I love
It's
it.
literally done. I had an amazing audition yesterday, and what it did for me. So, really quick, guys, you got to remember this. Dinner with Bevy, I worked with a slew of celebrities. Because I worked with all these celebrities, when I got my Sirius XM show, when people came to Sirius XM and they would say, do you want to talk to Bevy Smith? They would be like, oh my God, I love Bevy. Okay. So that's how I got all these great people on my radio show. Now moving forward into this acting space. I'm interviewing Brian Grazer next week. I've had Tyler Perry on my show. I've had so many great Lee Daniels, directors, producers, and all of that. You must know that I'm calling all these people and letting them know that I'm going to be acting.
100%.
Hello and good morning.
Yes. And they're going to be psyched.
Yes. And I will at least get a really good audition in.
Yes. I love it.
And that's the way that works.
I mean, I said it from day one. That's where you belong. 100%.
But I want your listeners to remember to build on. See, so none of this happens in a silo.
Yes. No, you've built your network. You've maintained it. You've nurtured it. You've watered it. And
expanded it.
And you've leveraged it into all these different opportunities, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
How does Bevy leave her mark?
Ooh. I think the mark that I most want to leave is, one, I love that I've always loved my community and been proud of where I'm from. And I think I'm in awe of the fact that now I actually make money because I've talked about loving Harlem for decades. And now whenever anyone needs to do something in Harlem, they come to me and say, can you, will you? Mm-hmm. And they give me a check. But I was doing this stuff because I loved it. I love my community, right? I've always felt it was important for me to stay in my community because I wanted little Black kids to see someone like me exist. When I was an advertising executive, it was important for them to know that that kind of career could exist for you. And I was in a general market space as well. And then I went into Vibe, which is an AFAM, more urban space. And then I went to Rolling Stone, the general market space. So I wanted the kids to know that you could do these things, right? And then the other part of it is that as far as a legacy goes, I want women to take control of their narrative. If I can teach women to be outspoken and to not hide their light under a bushel for anyone, and to, like I said, negotiate for yourself, and to make sure that you're a paradigm shifter. These are important things to me. This is the real work. Like Brian Grazer has a new book out and it's all about relationships and happiness and things like that. And I want my book to inspire people in that kind of way. I just want, especially women and people of color, to really be tapped into all of the magic that we have. Because I feel like anyone that's been kind of shut down, had their backs up against a wall, been seen as the underdog, we have a lot of resilience. We're tenacious. We know how to make things happen. So we should move forward and do that. So that would be the legacy. That's the way I want to leave my mark.
That's a brilliant legacy. And you're already doing so much of this. So you're just going to continue to do it. And you have always been, and you are such just a shining light for so many people. And I adore you. And thank you so much for coming on Leave Your Mark. And I can't wait to read your book.
Oh, it's racy. Oh, and can I also tell your listeners one other thing?
Yes.
Guys, always remember, it gets greater later. I am 52, about to be 53 years old. I'm going to have my first acting role at the age of 53. It gets greater later. And all the information that I've compiled over my decades is going to allow me to do great work on the stage and on the screen.
And put in your book so people learn from you, which is really such a gift. Bevy, I can't wait. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you, babe.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Leave Your Mark, the podcast. If you want more career advice, be sure to pick up my best-selling book, Leave Your Mark. If you want to subscribe to my career advice newsletter, Blackboard, you can do so on alizalicht.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at AlizaLichtXO or reach out on Twitter at AlizaLicht. And just remember this, if change doesn't hurt a little, it's not change. Keep on rocking.